really, because I wasn't quite sure the colours I was going to go for initially, and I found that it really worked. But I've also used some of the interference ink on there, and I don't know if the camera will actually be able to catch that. But the interference, I haven't used it everywhere, but I've used it on the details of the bottle, so therefore the label, and on the stem of the glass there, and it really takes to the vellum really, really well. But hopefully I can just show you that sheen of the interference ink on the vellum there. You can see it on the label and the details on the top of the bottle. Now I've just used the charcoal gold for that, and I've used a little bit of the golden sun for the centre of the flowers, but obviously if you're going to give this a go and you have all of the other colour inks, then you know, this can open up a whole new colour palette for you. So as I was saying, yes, this can easily be made into a birthday card or any type of celebration card really. I thought it was just really sort of quite appropriate to make it into an anniversary card. Now the colours that I'm using today actually, well, I've created a pink one here, but I wanted to use elements of the Modern Florals kit, so the designer kit. So I'll just bring this in quickly to show you. So if you remember from a little while ago when Lisa launched this Modern Florals, we have a set of designer papers, so you can see all the different papers here, and we have elements that can be die cut with a set of dies that you can also buy as part of the kit. So I just wanted to use these elements in a different way really. There's been a couple of lives done when we've just solely used this kit, but it's nice to be able to sort of integrate it into the stencils and the dies that you have sitting there also. So you can see that we have these elements here on a couple of the A4 sheets that can be die cut with the available dies, and I've done those already. I've just spent a bit of time just die cutting just one of these sheets actually, and I've just put these in a little carrier bag, so I shall use those as well. Yeah, you love this kit. It's a lovely kit, isn't it, Janet? And I think it's something that you can go back to time and again, either to make yourself a really, really quick card because all the elements are there. I don't have the sentiments, but you do get sentiments with this also, and a die that you can cut them out with. Also in this kit you do get some amazing vellum. Now this vellum is probably some of the best, or it's definitely the best that I've used. It's a really lovely weight. It's a 200 GSM, but I actually think it feels a little bit heavier than that for sure. And it's this vellum that I've actually stenciled the image onto, so I shall go ahead and show you that in a moment. So we have the plain vellum. You can see that comes in 6 colours that all coordinate with the designs. But we also have a second pack of vellum, which again it's a 200 GSM but feels really, really sturdy. But this is the pattern vellum. I won't be using this today, but I just wanted to show you that you do have that option. What I'm using today is a sheet of the vellum. Now because I'm going to create a yellow card today, more of a lemony card, so I shall be going to use the lemon coloured vellum. Let me just get myself a sheet of that out. Okay. And from the pattern papers, the designer papers, you can see that I've used the pink initially on this one, and some vellum overlay just to tone down some of the pink designer papers. For the card that I'll be demonstrating today, I've actually used the yellow. So I think this would be amazing for any golden anniversary cards. It doesn't have to be restricted to that, of course. But you do have the blue in here as well, which would be really nice to make for a guy's anniversary card. I think even the green as well. So I think these would work really well too. Now, if many of you are familiar with the Modern Florals kit as well, you'll know that they also have some embossing folders and some layering stencils that also go with the patterns as well. So it really is a complete kit, and it's a really nice way to actually start card making with Lisa. Now what I'm doing, I'm just going to give my Ultimate Matte a quick wipe. I've just turned the silicone matte over from my Ultimate 2, and what that will hopefully do, just make it a little bit easier for you to see the image that I'm stenciling. So I've got my piece of vellum, and you can see how sturdy it is. I mean, holding that at one end, it doesn't drape and it's not flimsy. It's got such a good weight to it, it really has. So I'm going to stencil. I'm going to keep this whole actually, so I'll cut this down to size in a moment once I've actually stenciled my image. So I'm starting off with the, I'll put those there for you. Can you see that? Yes. Good. So stencil number 1 of the Champagne and Roses. It's a really lovely set. Again, it's one of those ones that's sort of new to my collection, so it was really nice to be able to use this. I'm using the anthracite because I think this is a really standard colour that works with everything. Although it does have a slight blue hue to it, I think that really does allow itself to work with every colour background that you're using. I think it's just been nice to show you that you can have this versatility. Obviously, every other blending ink that you have will work on here and will work onto vellum as well. So initially, I just want the background of the bottle here. I'm going to pick up just a tiny amount of ink because I don't want this layer to really overpower. So I'm basically using what is left on the brush and what is left on the stencil. And you can see that that is sitting nicely already on to the vellum. I think it's also really useful to show you that working on to vellum, these inks dry really quickly. If you put the ink on really dark, like some of these areas here, you may just have to allow that ink just to dry a little bit. But it does dry. It does dry really quick on vellum. It does, Janet, absolutely. Especially when you're doing such light layers. If you're using just the residual ink from the brush and from, well, I've used this stencil before, but if you're just using residual ink from the brush and building up the layers really, really gently, then yes, the ink dries pretty much almost instantly, to be honest. If you pick up too much ink from the pad, it really is worth just blotting it off onto either a piece of paper or, to be honest, onto the stencil material. I find this a really useful tool, as it were. I mean, obviously I'm stenciling through the aperture, but there's an awful lot of the mylar left here that if I pick up too much ink, I can just blot that off on the rest of the mylar there, and I can use that as a palette then. So if I just take a lot of that off and then work through the aperture, if I feel like I need some more of that ink, I'll just pick it up from there and just work with it, you see. But working with such little layers, like light layers like this, that ink has dried sort of instantly. And you can see how well that sits on there, and you can get all the blending capabilities as normal as you would do onto cardstock. So coming on to stencil 2, we have a couple of layers here. Now we have the top of the glass. This is where I always like to have this as reference for you. So the top of the glass is sitting here, which I would say we'd need that to be a lot lighter than the contents. So I'm just going to go really gently, and you notice that I didn't pick up any ink whatsoever. So I'll just show you what I've done there. Okay? You can see the difference, and you can see that now the glass is like half full. So we notice here that we've got the flowers in the background. Now, I think what I might do, I might actually pick these out in a colour, and the rest of the image can then be sort of monotone. So I'm using the Golden Sun. A lot of people have noticed that I've used these blending inks or these tools. These are tools that I made myself years ago, to be honest, because I actually, the way my hands are, I don't have arthritis or whatever, but I can find some things really awkward sometimes. And I just found these a lot easier to hold. It's basically just a piece of doweling or a piece of, or a broom handle that we've just cut down to size. I've got myself some Velcro on the end, and these are the blending sponges from Lisa. So these come with the blending tools, and they work, excuse me as I lean over, they work in exactly the same way as the tools that you can get from Lisa. This is the standard, but you can see that this basically works the same. I find it a lot easier to hold like this. Yeah, it's just, I know a lot of people have commented on that, but basically the actual bit that I'm using the tool are the blending sponges from Lisa. So I have the Golden Sun interference ink, so I can pick that up, and I will actually add that to the flowers. So I will be slightly different to this one, where I've just added colour to the centre of the flowers. I shall do this the other way around for these flowers, and the interference inks will dry just as quick as well, because if you in theory think we are only putting such a light layer of ink onto there, and you can see how well that vellum takes the colour, and you probably can't see it at the moment, and I'll show you later, but I can already see the mica coming through. Okay, so what we have here, details of the bottle, so that would definitely be done in the interference ink with the charcoal gold, as will the stem of the glass. So I have my other blending tool for the charcoal gold. And we'll really blend that into there. Now I will put quite a lot of ink into this because I really do want that mica to come through. And the colours aren't as bold when you blend onto vellum. That is just the nature of what it is you're working with. But it does give you a very subtle image, and I think it's really lovely. So you can stare, and I can already see. I mean, I really urge you to give this a go, because already I can see before I've moved the stencil that the mica is there. It really is quite pronounced on vellum. It's really lovely, really lovely to use. Now we have a little bit of the glass here, and I'm just going to gently swipe over there. I don't want too much, to be honest. That'll be just enough just to add some highlight. So I can take that away, and you can see the detail sitting there. Now I will show you that in a moment. And if anything, I think I prefer this on the yellow vellum as opposed to the pink vellum. So it's interesting, isn't it? Okay, so stencil 4, we have the stems of the flowers, and I think I'll come in and do that with the anthracite. So a slightly smaller brush, and I will go a little bit darker on these, just so they stand out. So I will pick up plenty of ink. And you'll notice now that each time I'm taking away the stencil, that the ink isn't smudging, so I think that can give you the confidence that the ink dries quick enough to be able to work onto vellum. Okay, so you can see that sitting there. So we have stencil number 5, and this is where we start introducing the flowers. Now you could really have some fun here with the different colours. I'm going to stick with my monotone, stick with the anthracite, and just blend that slightly into the flowers. This is the base of the flowers. Obviously, if you know Lisa stencils, you know that we have detail to sit on top of this, so we'll keep this quite light. We can still have an element of shading by concentrating the ink from the base of the flowers and moving upwards, so that gives an element of shading like that. So now we're coming in with the detail of the flowers, the roses in the background there. Now obviously you could again use interference inks to create these, and I think that would look so pretty, but I'm going to stick with my colour theme at the moment, and I will work a little bit more ink into this. You can see I'm just picking up a little bit of ink as I go along. I'm starting on the stencil material, so on the mylar first, and then working into the aperture itself. There we are, you can see the detail of those roses, and I think that's just so pretty. This next stencil, so stencil number 7 out of 8, we have 8 stencils in this kit. These are the centres of the flowers, so I will come in and do those in black for the anthracite this time. So it's the opposite the way that I've done on the sample card there. Now this is the last stencil, so we have a tiny bit of detail for the bottom of the glass and the bottom of the bottle, so I will come in quite dark with those. There we are, I should move the stencils out of the way, I must remember to wash them for next time. And now I can move that image and I should be able to show you. If I just bring that up slowly, you can see that detail on that, and it's that I wanted to achieve, and that's what that makes that a little bit special. Just by using that monotone and just using that little bit of interference ink just here and there, I think that's a really nice way to make that image look special. Now you'll see the difference actually when I take that away and you have nothing behind the vellum. It does look slightly different, doesn't it? But then if I put that down against the white background, it sort of intensifies the colour. So with that in mind, when we come to die cut this, which we'll do first before embossing, we'll die cut this with the largest of our oval dies, okay, and then we'll line that up. I've done this already, so I didn't have to go to the die cutting machine this time around. So I've already done that. I've die cut the image with the largest oval circle. I've lined it up in the embossing folder and then run it through the embossing machine. Now what you'll notice before you emboss, that you will have a section of the oval. If you use the oval, you might choose to do a different shape, in which case it might not be an issue. But if with the oval, it does stick out from the bottom slightly. So what you need to bear in mind when you make your sandwich, platform sandwich, to run through the die cutting machine, make sure that that area is not sitting between the sandwich. Now it could be a larger area, it might be small. On here I think it's slightly larger. You'd want this sitting out, and what that will then do is make sure that you don't have an indent or an embossed line across the bottom or any other place. So if this was slightly higher, you'd want to have the sandwich sitting slightly higher. So basically the area of the design that you want sitting between the sandwich is the part that you want to emboss. And when I take this out, now you'll see exactly what I mean. So when I bring this away, you'll notice that you don't have any line to suggest that it was sitting outside of the embossing folder. So that's a really nice technique to use. So yeah, this is one I've done before, and I've used exactly the same colours. The flowers turned out a little bit darker, but then that's the nature of the beast, isn't it, when we do something multiple times. But I think that's what I like about crafting. If you gave this a try, it'd look different again. So okay, so to mount this then, I think this looks far better against a white background. So I've die cut myself a piece of white card with the largest oval. Those two will marry up together, like so. She says. It did work. Did work in practice. There we are. Yeah, so those marry up together. So I think that sitting that against a white mat just highlights the detail on the vellum there. Then also I've just created myself a frame, so I'll be using the largest of the ovals and then the next one down, the smallest one down, and that's what gives me the frame. So now we can add these together. Also, because we've worked onto vellum, we've got that age-old problem of securing vellum to the card without the adhesive being seen. So by creating a little frame like this, we've made that problem go away, really, haven't we? So we can use the elements of the frame to hide the glue, so we keep that vellum intact with no glue showing. So that's, I just added the frame. Now bear with me where I just make sure that lines up. Okay, so the frame is added. So when we turn this over and we add the adhesive so we can stick it to our mat, again we just want to add the glue just out of eye shot. So we just go around the outside of the oval frame, like so. And just make sure that those die cuts all line up like that. Okay, there. So there we have our lovely topper. Now, at this stage, what you do with this is entirely up to you. So that is just a really lovely topper, which would look nice on its own with a simple sentiment, I think. Actually, I'll move that. I forgot to stick that down. But we have our card blank. Now, I'm working with a larger card blank today. And I think this is, I'll just show you the size. This works out to be, it's an 8x8 card. But when I was prepping this, I was a little bit undecided as to what to do. I started off with a 5x7 card, and I'll just show you that on there. That works really nicely on there, I think, doesn't it? And I'll just bring in the mats and layers that I've created. They will fit onto the 8x8. But if you think about perhaps matting and layering this on to a 5x7 card, I think that works really well. You can... I've used the nested, scalloped and stitched rectangles. If you were to use the largest of these dies, the scalloped die, that would create a perfect mat to sit in the background here. So instead of using this square with the bubble dots around the outside, you could use this large one to create your mat, and I think that would work. But I wanted, the way that I was playing around with this, I think it actually looked a little bit better. Perhaps a little bit more special if you're making this for a special anniversary to work on to a square card. So I'll just show you the dies I've used. So to create these two layers, we have the design paper cut from the largest of the nested stitched bubble squares. Then the next mat down, I've actually used the vellum, and that's just to tone down the amount of yellow, because we'll have the yellow showing in the foreground. That would be fine, but I didn't want this to show in the background. It was just too much for me. Then we have our stitched rectangle set, again from the lovely design paper. Again, this is such a good weight too. And I'm going to attach this first to the vellum, and I want that to sit right there. And I'm doing it this way around because that means I can now attach the vellum to the back layer, and I know where to add my glue, so it's hidden. Okay, so there is a little bit of planning involved when you use vellum, a little bit of sort of strategic planning, just so as you know where the glue's going to go and so it can be hidden. Okay, so I've cut another 2 rectangles, this time from the white cardstock that I've layered the image onto, and another piece of vellum, again cut from the stitched rectangles. Now I know that my image is going to be sitting on this side, so that means that I can attach the vellum to its layer over here, and I know that this area is going to be concealed, but if you actually look at that, that glue is actually quite well hidden to start with anyway, isn't it? And then I can, how am I going to do this? I think this time round I'm going to attach this layer directly to the card with the glue. So we'll put that central. So this is like a traditional card making, back to lots of mats and layers. It's something that I've not actually created like this for a long while. But it's really nice. This is how you originally sort of learn when you come into the craft, how you learn to make your mats and layers, isn't it? And it is so effective. I don't know why I don't do it so much these days. So I want that layer sitting there. And just to build this up, I will use some 3D foam. Right, we need to bring in some elements of the Modern Florals kit, don't we? So I'm going to get my die cut images. Now, as I say, I've sat and just spent a little bit of time die cutting these out. It's really worth it to have them on hand to use now. I've also die cut myself my sentiments, so this is where I can start having a little play and just a little rearrange just to see where I want things to go. So the words have been die cut and stamped from the Happy Perfect You set. It's a massive set, but it's really useful because it has all of the different celebrations on there, and lovely die cuts. So I think those we'll have sitting there, and I will use just little amounts of 3D foam just to add to the back of my sentiment there. I just cut myself some really small amounts. So the sentiment has been cut from the white cardstock and just layered once. You do have the opportunity to layer this a couple of times with that set, but I've layered it just once, and I've used the vellum just to keep the coordination going through. And if I just strategically place little bits of foam onto the background, they will actually sort of disappear when we add those to the card. You can get small, or you can even just cut this a little bit smaller so you know that it will disappear into the background, but I think that will work just as well. So we can, I'm just going to move that happy there so I can have that sit there, I think, just so as we can sit that and lay that across the image like so. There we are. So we have that there, and I'll probably just put a tiny stab of glue just to make sure that that sits flat on there, and I'll just do that by adding a little glue to the frame underneath. Okay, just wait for that to take. Right, I've stamped the anniversary, and this rectangle actually comes from the nested and stitched rectangles that I've used for the rest of the card. This is the very smallest one, and that worked just perfectly to stamp anniversary onto. And now we can bring in our elements from the Modern Florals kit. So now you can really go to town with how you decorate this. This is the advantage of having spending a little bit of time and just die cutting your images to start with. So I think what I might do, actually use a tiny little bit of glue. You don't want to go too much because obviously we're going straight onto the vellum and we don't want it to buckle too much. But it's just a really small bit of glue will be enough. Okay. Now you'll see the workings of these leaves at the moment, but once I add the flowers on top, that will all disappear. So we can have that around the side. You can go to town as much or as little as you want on this. I mean, it's entirely up to you how much detail you want to go. So let me think. I really like these little flowers. I'm going to add a couple of those with just glue. You can obviously use 3D foam as well. You can get your gems out. So I think I might actually just go with 3 of those. I think that works really well. Now this would make a really nice golden anniversary card, wouldn't it? Sort of 50th, if you wanted to go with a theme. So that, I think, is about as far as I need to go with that. And if I hold that up to you, you can see you've got the lovely mica coming through, which now it's dried properly, that is really, really pretty. I really like that. So that's today's card for you. What I thought would be a really nice idea as well, if you're using the vellum and you want to make a special anniversary card, if you've got these sets, it would be really nice to stencil these onto vellum and die cut them out and incorporate those into the ovals and everything as well, wouldn't it? Especially with this modern floral set. So I think it's something I might actually do. Just give that a go to stencil these onto vellum. I think that would work really well. Or any other of your floral sets would work really well too, wouldn't they? So there's today's card for you. I hope that you managed to stick with me. So yeah, enjoy the rest of your week and I shall see you Thursday. Thanks for joining me today. Bye now.